Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ask the Educator podcast. This is Kevin Anderson, your host, and with me as co-host, as always, Adam Okada. And for this episode, I'm really excited to introduce Nicole Simon. Nicole is not one of the clinical team here at Healthmark. She's a entrepreneur in the sterile processing space. So really excited to get into this interview with you, Nicole. So if you wouldn't mind, just kind of let the listeners know who you are, a little bit of background about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Nicole Simon. A little bit about my background. I have been in healthcare for 19 years, and the past 9 years have been spent in sterile processing. I started my journey in sterile processing in 2017 in Sarasota, Florida. And since then, I have had the pleasure and opportunity to do so many different things in this industry. I spent 4 years living in a camper van, traveling around the United
Mhm.
States, taking contracts as a sterile processing traveler. I have done a little bit of consulting with a company called Advantage Support Services. I have gotten into leadership, and currently I am a traveling interim sterile processing manager. And I also have a company called Simon Sterilization Solutions.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons we wanted you on the
Yeah.
podcast here is because you are an entrepreneur in the sterile processing space, which is pretty rare. There aren't that many people that start businesses in a sterile processing industry. So how did that idea come about?
Well, I'm very passionate about the industry. I'm passionate about people and processes. And so there was there were many issues that I saw across the United States when I took contracts that were pretty common no matter where I went. But there was an issue that I was encountering time and time again, no matter where I went. And um, it happened so frequently. And it was, the challenge that we face on the front line as sterile processing technicians when we're inspecting cannulated instruments on the clean side of sterile processing. Um, so you can't see from first sight if that instrument is still contaminated. So you don't know until you've already begun the process or completed the process, depending on what modality of inspection you're using. But most times it's too late and you've contaminated your workstation. You've potentially put yourself at risk, or, contaminated your borescope camera, and so it was almost every single tray at this facility that had cannulated instrumentation that I knew without a doubt I was going to come across something that was contaminated on the clean side. So, of course, I couldn't let it go. Got a little bit obsessive about it just because I felt like this is a huge problem that needs a solution. And so I began kind of coming up with ideas in my head about, the problem is that we cannot 100% guarantee that a human on the other side is not going to make a mistake or miss something. So, how do we get in between the error and the contamination, really? So, it's really to reduce the risk of coming into contact. So, I'm thinking about the patient. I'm thinking about the sterile processing technician. And so I needed to create something that would contain materials produced or potentially produced during that inspection process on the clean side. And so I began, thinking of things in my head and then drawing things out and um, fashioning little mini prototypes together at work and trying things out. And so the little they're like those little tubes that your drill bits come in from, Synthes or Stryker. So
Yeah.
I used that just as a little test tube to trial it at work.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? This is I'm onto something. I know I'm onto something. And I kind of sat on that idea for a while. And I went to my next contract. Some time had passed. I sat on the idea because I wasn't quite sure where to go with it. I have this
Mhm.
idea, but what do I do? And so, once again, at the next contract, I came across the same concerns. And I finally decided that I needed to reach out to someone. I had been building my network on LinkedIn for a couple of years by this point. So I knew a lot of people that were very prominent in the sterile processing industry, just by connecting on LinkedIn. And so I set up a phone call with Hank Balch with Beyond Clean, just to kind of run my idea by him. And he said, you know what? I think you have something, and I want to connect you with Jeff Berger. And Jeff Berger is he's an engineer by trade, and he was also studying to become a patent agent. So he connected us. We formed a little partnership. And so he kind of took care of the things that he was very knowledgeable about, such as product design and development, and submitting the patent paperwork. And then I kind of took on the, sterile processing and technical side of it, of how is this product that we're developing going to work in the field. So,
Oh, that's excellent. I gotta say, I know you probably have done a lot of traveling as a traveler to, and I mean, I feel like I could have told you without having to travel that this lumen issue is
huge.
unanimously going to be an issue everywhere you go. There's just uh there's just a dearth of, actual solutions, and they're getting better. We're getting better options compared to historically. But I mean, all of us can remember going into departments, and some of them still have them, like actual pipe cleaners from like craft stores and things like
Oh
that,
my
and
gosh. Yes.
people doing all kinds of flushing maneuvers over the trash can or over a white towel or whatever. And I've seen some of your posts and how were able to show that, that's risky business. We shouldn't actually be doing that. And I think, an interesting sort of side point about this is a couple devices that we know on the market, surgical instrument devices that require a borescope inspection in the IFU actually require that inspection on the decontam side, which would prevent, if you do the inspection over there, it would prevent that dirty lumen from making it to the clean side, which is the real problem that you are trying to address. And to your point, I don't know if there's a way to do it perfectly every single time. And so that's why I thought your solution was pretty unique, simple. I don't know what the like what the cost is and all of that. Or is it reusable? Is it single use? That kind of thing. So I'm guessing from the looks of it, it looks very cost effective. And so I I think it's like another one of those tools that could be in our arsenal to really solve this problem. So I definitely want to congratulate you on that. That's pretty awesome. Everybody I think that I've ever known in healthcare has had some idea for a product, and it happens to me all the time as well. But it's just that, like, what do you do with that? That's always the lingering question. And I love that you utilized your LinkedIn network, and um, you actually went out on a limb and contacted some people, and lo and behold, they had other contacts that they could hook you up with. That like shows you the power that there is in networking and utilizing the resources you do have. And then you didn't have to know all the other stuff, right? You found a partner who was, picked up where the parts that you didn't have, the expertise you didn't have, and now you have a product. So, pretty awesome. So, is that the only product right now in your portfolio? And if so, is there plans for more? Or are you just kind of trying to ramp this one up, or what's that look like right now for you?
So right now, the Barrier Buddy is my only product, and to answer some of those questions, it is a cost-effective solution. Sustainability was very important when I was developing this product because, sterile processing in the operating room create the most waste in a healthcare system. So I didn't want to further contribute to that. And I also, some people say, well, that might not necessarily be the most realistic route to go because a lot of the money is made in disposables, and eventually it is disposable. And it states that in the IFU that it does have, you inspect it every time you wash it, and there's points that are made in the IFU about wear and tear and when it's time to discard and replace. But to a certain degree, it is reusable. That way we're not, just filling up our landfills like really quickly. And also, I keep in mind too that I am in the process of developing other products that I know will be very useful. I went to a vendor show in Wisconsin back in the fall, and I took some prototypes for another product that I'm developing, and I laid them out on my table. And somebody liked it so much that they put it in
They
their
went
little
walking.
bag and they went walking away with it. So I had to track them down and say, I'm really glad you liked that product, but can I have it back because it's just a prototype. So I'm excited to develop that one out, and then I've got a couple others. So it takes a little bit of time, especially because this is, gosh, I could get so much accomplished if this was like my full-time
Yeah.
breadwinning job. And that's my goal. My goal is that I can generate enough revenue that I can work for myself and that I can build a team of really passionate people, and that we can give back to our industry and community and, in the form of education, in the form of, learning opportunities, and things like that. So to answer your question in a long-winded way, I have more
Mhm.
products coming out.
Very cool. And yeah, I mean, the Barrier Buddy is so needed. I think it's definitely going to be something that will catch on once people realize what it's for and realize, hey, this is a gap. This is a need that we have.
Yes.
But what do you think? I mean, it's so cool hearing your idea about where this came from and how you developed this and everything. But what do you think the state of entrepreneurship is for sterile processing right now? Do you think there are opportunities? If somebody out there is listening and says, I really have this entrepreneurial bug. I really want to get started and do this. Do you think there are opportunities for people to start a business in the sterile processing space?
Absolutely 100%. I have so many, once you form an LLC and you start really working on your baby, which is your business, um, I have so many ideas in my head about the direction that I could take my company, about how I could make, little umbrella companies that offer, different services and products. But ultimately, there's been a lot of innovation within the past probably 5 to 10 years in sterile processing. And then, of course, with LinkedIn, um, coming in the mix of social media, there's been a lot more exposure to our industry. We are considering different concepts, and so therefore, sterile processing as an industry is going in a new direction. There's, new concepts such as offsite reprocessing. With offsite reprocessing, there are new needs and new services that can be developed and offered to the ORCs. So there's so much that you could do if you're motivated, if you're determined, if you have that entrepreneurial mind and business mindset. There's so much. The sky is the limit if you're passionate.
Yeah, that's great advice. Like, I know that it takes a lot to build a business, so like just thinking about it is overwhelming for most people. So I know you gave us a little insight into how you started your specific business, but if you're a little bit ahead of the game to the whole thing compared to some people who might just have some ideas in their mind. I mean, would you have any, basic advice for any budding sterile processing entrepreneurs out there?
Yes. You know, I have enjoyed this journey so much that, and I have noticed a gap. It's been extremely hard for me to even find a mentor.
Mm,
And I would love if a sterile processing technician contacted me and they had this great business idea, or a great idea for a product, and they needed somebody to kind of guide them in the right direction and help them find resources. And
yeah.
I've said this in other podcasts, in interviews that please reach out to me. Oh my God, I would love that so much. But really, it's being resourceful, developing a strategy, and then coming up with a plan. And networking. I think for me, a lot of the opportunities, if not every single one, has come from networking.
Yeah.
Building relationships is very important.
Yeah, I think that's massive. And your connections, who you know, all those things are going to come into play. So great advice. Any final thoughts that you want to give listeners on maybe where they can go to learn more about the Barrier Buddy or anything else?
Yeah, so I do have a website. It's www.simonsterilizationsolutions.com. You can reach out to me by email, Nicole at simonsterilizationsolutions.com. I'm always ready and willing to help another technician in our industry. So, whatever it may be, starting a business, you have a product idea, or you just want to talk about the profession, your career, I am all ears.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Nicole, and sharing the story behind your business and, putting it out there that you're available to mentor. That's really kind of you to offer that. And I just want to thank you one last time for being on the podcast and wish you all the best and all the success in your endeavors.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.